This is a letter to address the amount of people I see claiming they're somehow a victim because of a Trump presidency. I think the victim claimers are wrong, and I have something to say to them. It's amazing to me the effect a nicely placed Weber News banner, a well-worded or timed headline, a properly cut video clip, and an easily outraged social environment can have on public ability to formulate rational analysis on an individual, a group, an idea, or an event. I believe that is what we are seeing play out in the social environment in front of us, in regards to all things political, all things politically correct, and especially in regards to Donald Trump. Before the days of internet on our smartphones, incessant social media use, and the newly formed, trend-setting, nation-sweeping hobby of being outraged that has come about as a direct result of this sudden access to widespread instant communication, you and none of your friends would have had such a public arena to voice your opinions, and without it, you would have had to voice your opinion in a public place, looking at the faces of real-life people. This meant a couple things. First is that you wouldn't have the luxuries of a laptop in front of your face where you can just go look up someone else's opinion and then reform the words to fit onto your own social media page. You'd actually have to have your own opinion that you formulated that isn't some fair weather opinion. It has to be committed to your memory. If you wouldn't take your opinion out for public debate with a complete stranger, keep it off your social media page, or you risk looking foolish. That's just my opinion. The second consequence of sole public debate is that when you were in a heated debate, if you decided to sling out any type of insult that you can see across the social media feeds today, you had to be ready to take a punch right after. Because some of us are getting really vicious out there, and that's no way to talk to people. Anyone with a smartphone, tablet, or laptop can upload to YouTube within minutes or post to Facebook within seconds, and it seems like everyone wants to cry out they're a victim because of a Trump presidency. When all of a sudden everyone is crying out about how they're a victim, it then diminishes the value of those who might be speaking up, voicing actual concern. Psychologically, there's no difference between receiving glory and receiving pity in regards to the kick of dopamine one gets from receiving glory or pity. And it pains me to say that most of the victim claiming I see looks more like a cry for some of that free dopamine-filled pity that's being dished out. Most of the concerns do not preach concern about outcomes that are in any way rooted in fact, sensibility, or reality. That is why I felt I had something to say, like I could carve out a little corner of fact-seeking and hopefully build some kind of dialogue. On to the next order of business, again directed to those I deem as the so-called victims of Trump. Do you really think you have all that much to complain about? The next few ideas I'll voice are roughly similar as I've heard them voiced by Dr. Jordan Peterson, someone who has clearly inspired the formatting of this video and the way it's being presented. The problem with even the not-so-heavy portion of left-side ideology is that it's orienting the faults of our society towards culture that of which is utopian. While this is noble and with good intention, it unfortunately is ill-advised. Anyone who believes in the idea that history repeats itself should do a brief history recap on what happened to societies past who've legislated with a utopian mindset, and one will see in every single instance it led to mass chaos, mass detainment, and a massive amount of casualties. Maybe we should get rid of the idea that it makes sense to consider legislation based on a utopian society that's never existed, and consider that it would make much more sense to base our legislative decisions on something simply in a direction that is better, and not one again that is on a utopian society that's never existed. It might be more advisable for anyone who preaches political correctness to use ideas that come from societies that have existed. If you live in North America, you represent roughly 5% of the world's population. Not very many people move away from North America, and that's for a good reason. Turns out it's a pretty sweet gig to live here, and as far as I'm concerned, I played the lottery and won, because I had absolutely no role in my ending up here. My parents just banged, and then boom, I was in San Diego Hospital. I think this is something that should not be taken for granted. If you wanted to start the argument where it starts, I would say, hey, you live better than probably 95% of the entire world. Do you really think you're a victim? The next case I'd like to attempt to make about the SCVTs is that you cannot be taken seriously when you subscribe to this awful journalism that you're often associated with. One headline that I've seen read something like, "A Guide to Trump's Many Immigration Policy Mistakes." I'm sorry, but anyone who subscribes and supports a headline of this nature is a dimwit as far as I'm concerned, because they're doing two things with a headline like this. First is they aren't reporting here, they're telling you how to think about something. You're smart enough to figure it out for yourself, aren't you? Secondly, they're completely neglecting the fact that almost never in history has policy gone into place and been immediately effective. That's literally never how it works. News sources like these have been trying to warp the way you view Trump since day one. To clarify, this letter is not in defense to Trump. This letter is in defense to the truth. His words have been twisted, and before I end the first rendition of me speaking in front of a camera, I'd like to iron out one giant misconception in regards to the president and one of the things he's supposedly said. And in my next video, I'll more in depth tackle the specific legislative moves versus misconceptions that Trump has taken, since that seems to be the current topic of the week, day, and hour. I've been wanting to get this off my chest for a while because it's been bothering me since day one of Trump's campaign. You'll probably immediately recognize what I'm talking about, so I'll just address it directly. To all you who keep standing by the claim that Donald Trump called all Mexicans rapists, you are directly a part of the problem. If you can't listen to what people are actually saying, you should hold off your warped opinion forming about that person. He clearly stated that a portion of those who immigrated from Mexico to the United States illegally are sometimes rapists. Well, we actually happen to know that this is a fact. So I don't see why it blew up. But also, if you'd actually listen to the guy talk for more than just 1 second, you would have heard him clarify that it's not just Mexicans who are immigrating here illegally from Mexico, but it's also people from all over South America, possibly the Middle East as well. And that's why we need to find out. So he wasn't even just talking about Mexicans. We need to get better at listening to each other and listening to other people speak. I close this letter with something that will act as a precursor to the next video. A quote from a world leader. "We've seen peace-loving Muslims brutalized, victimized, murdered, and oppressed by ISIS killers. We've seen threats of extermination against Jewish people. We've seen a campaign of ISIS and genocide against Christians, where they cut off heads. Not since the Middle Ages have we seen that. They drown people in steel cages. We've never seen this before. For many, many years, all nations have a moral obligation to speak out against such violence. All nations have a duty to work together to confront it, and to confront it viciously if we have to. So I want to express clearly today to the American people that my administration will do everything in its power to defend and protect religious liberty in our land. America must forever remain a tolerant society where all faiths are respected and where all of our citizens can feel safe and secure. We have to feel safe and secure. In recent days, we have begun to take necessary action to achieve that goal. Our nation has the most generous immigration system in the world, but these are those, and there are those, that would exploit that generosity to undermine the values that we hold so dear. We need security. There are those who would seek to enter our country for the purpose of spreading violence or oppressing people based on faith or their lifestyle. Not right. We will not allow a beachhead of intolerance to spread in our nation. You look all over the world and you'd see what's happening. So in the coming days, we will develop a system to ensure that those admitted into our country fully embrace our values of religious and personal liberty, and that they reject any form of oppression and discrimination. We want people to come into our nation, but we want people to love us, and to love our values, not to hate us, and to hate our values. By now you've probably guessed that that was said by President Donald Trump, just on February 2nd. Thanks for listening.